Welcome back, everyone. Ready for another deep dive?
Absolutely. Always excited to jump into a new paper.
All right. Today we're looking at something called robust uncertainty principles. Exact signal reconstruction from highly incomplete frequency information.
Ooh, that's a mouthful.
Right. Sounds a bit like science fiction, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But it's all about how we can recreate complex things, like images or signals, from just little scraps of information.
Like putting together a puzzle with most of the pieces missing.
Exactly. And that's what really caught my eye. How is that even possible? The paper starts with this fascinating example from medical imaging. Imagine a simplified CT scan. You're trying to build a 2D image, like a slice through the body, but you only have a limited set of these frequency
Okay,
samples.
I'm following. Limited information. Got it.
So they use this standard test image. It's called the Logan-Shep phantom.
The phantom, right. Yeah, it's like a simple head-like shape.
Yeah, a simple head-like shape. So they're working with this digital phantom, and they only have a few pieces of frequency information. Kind of like trying to figure out the song from hearing just a few notes, right?
I see, I see. So what happens next? Do they manage to make anything out of that limited data?
Well, the remarkable thing is they were able to reconstruct the phantom perfectly. And they did it by using this method that focuses on minimizing something called total variation.
Total variation. I'm not familiar with that. What does that even mean when we're talking about images?
Well, think of it this way. In an image, total variation is basically how much the image changes from one pixel to the next.
Oh, I see. So a smooth image where things change gradually, that would have low total variation.
Exactly. And a noisy image with all those abrupt changes would have high total variation.
So they're basically saying, let's find the simplest image that still fits the limited data we have.
You got it. It's like Occam's razor for signal reconstruction. And the reason this works so well is tied to this whole interplay between uncertainty principles and this concept of sparsity.
Okay, now we're getting into some pretty heady stuff. Uncertainty principles, sparsity, feels like we're about to unlock some hidden layer of the universe here.
Maybe we are, who knows? But let's start with the basics, the classical uncertainty principle. You might remember this from physics. It says you can't know both the exact position and momentum of a particle perfectly at the same time.
Right, like if you try to pin down a wave's location, you kind of lose information about how it's moving.
Exactly. So how does this uncertainty idea apply to, reconstructing signals?
Well, think about the notes in a song as frequencies. If you only hear a few scattered notes, the uncertainty principle suggests it would be really hard to figure out the whole song.
Because there's so much uncertainty about all the notes we didn't hear.
Exactly, and that's where sparsity comes in. Sparsity just means that a lot of real-world signals and images, they're mostly empty, with just a few crucial bits of information.
Okay, give me an example of that.
Well, think about a star field. Mostly black space with a few bright stars scattered here and there. Or a song, mostly silence, but then you have those few notes sprinkled in.
So our song might be mostly silence with a few notes here and there. And that emptiness, that actually helps us fill in the gaps.
Exactly. The paper argues that this sparsity is key. It lets us overcome the limitations that are imposed by the uncertainty principle. To test this idea, the researchers simplified things and focused on a 1D model problem, like trying to reconstruct a simple sound wave from just a few of its frequency components.
All right, I'm with you. So not trying to reconstruct a whole symphony, more like a single clear note from a few hints of its frequencies.
You got it. And instead of trying every possible combination of frequencies to find the right one, they found this clever shortcut. They look for the signal that has the smallest total change, like the simplest possible wave that still matches those frequency clues they have. This is where this idea of minimizing the O1 norm comes in.
Hold on, O1 norm. I'm sensing another deep dive within our deep dive coming up. Can you unpack that a bit for us?
Sure. In simple terms, the O1 norm measures the overall jumpiness of a signal. Think of it like the total amount of up and down movement in a roller coaster.
I see. So a smooth roller coaster, low O1.
Yeah.
A super jerky one, high O1 norm.
You got it. So they're essentially looking for the smoothest, least jumpy signal that fits the frequency information they have.
Makes sense to me. And what's amazing is that this approach works incredibly well. They were able to recover the original signal perfectly, well, at least with a very high probability. But that's only if the original signal was sparse enough. Now, you said high probability, so that means it doesn't always work perfectly. Are there cases where this method just fails?
That's a great question. And that leads us to the heart of this paper, this concept of robust uncertainty principles. But we'll dive into that after a quick break.
This is already blowing my mind.
Yeah.
We're about to enter a world where we can reconstruct complex things from limited information, and it all comes down to this idea of sparsity. I can't wait to see where this goes.
It's a truly fascinating area of research, and it has the potential to revolutionize so many fields, from medical imaging to data recovery.
Buckle up, everyone, because this deep dive is about to get even more exciting.
You said it.
All right, we're back and ready to tackle these robust uncertainty principles. I think we left off talking about sparsity, how a lot of real-world information is mostly empty, just a few key bits, and that emptiness helps us reconstruct the full picture.
Right, exactly. But you made a good point before the break. The method doesn't always work perfectly, right? It's not like some magic trick. There's this probabilistic element to it.
Yeah, you mentioned high probability of success. What determines if it works or not?
Well, that's where Theorem 1.3 comes in. It's kind of the central finding of the paper. And it lays out these specific conditions for when this one minimization trick, this whole idea of finding the smoothest signal, is likely to succeed.
So like a set of rules that says if this and this and this are true, then you're good to go.
Exactly. And the theorem connects two main things, the number of missing frequencies and the complexity of the original signal.
Okay, so the more frequency information we're missing, the harder it is to reconstruct the signal. That makes sense. And the more complex the original signal, the more likely we'll need more frequency information to get it right.
You've got it. But here's the really interesting part. The result is probabilistic. It doesn't work for every possible combination of missing frequencies, just for most of them.
So it's like if we just randomly remove some frequencies and try to reconstruct the signal, chances are good that this method will work.
Exactly. And that's what this robust uncertainty principle captures.
Okay, I've been waiting for this. Lay it on me. What exactly is this robust uncertainty principle, and how does it make this whole reconstruction thing work?
It's pretty brilliant, really. The paper basically gives us a new uncertainty principle, one that's stronger than the classical one we talked about before.
A new uncertainty principle. Is this like an upgrade?
You could say that. The old one tells us it's hard to know both time and frequency perfectly at the same time. But this new one, this robust principle, it tells us that even though we can't know everything perfectly, we can still know enough to reconstruct the signal pretty accurately, at least most of the time.
So it's not just about the limits of what we can know, but about like how we can work within those limits.
Exactly. This robust principle holds for most choices of time and frequency supports, not just special cases. And that's why this whole method is so successful. It's exploiting the fact that real-world signals, they tend to be sparse, and that uncertainty doesn't always block our view completely.
It's like they found a secret passage through the uncertainty wall. We've been talking about this 1D sound wave example, but I'm guessing this goes way beyond simple sounds, right?
Oh, absolutely. This has wide applications. The paper shows how their findings extend to 2D images, like that phantom example we started with, and even to other types of signals.
So we could use this for, say, medical imaging, where you're trying to reconstruct a detailed image of the body from just a limited set of scans.
Exactly. And that has huge implications. Think about reducing radiation exposure in CT scans by taking fewer samples or reconstructing images from damaged or incomplete data.
Wow, this is really incredible. We're talking about like revolutionizing entire fields here.
Sure.
But you mentioned there are limitations. What are some of the challenges in actually applying this to real-world problems?
Well, the real world, it's often a lot messier than those nice, ideal models we use in theoretical research. One big challenge is noise.
Noise, like static in a radio signal or graininess in a photo.
Exactly. Real-world signals, they're rarely perfectly clean. They're often corrupted by noise or errors in measurement, and that can throw off our reconstruction attempts.
I guess that makes sense. Even if you have most of the pieces of a puzzle, if some are bent or discolored, it's much harder to get the picture right.
Precisely. And the researchers acknowledge this. They say that making these methods more robust to noise, that's a key area for future work. We need algorithms that can really effectively filter out that noise and get to the true signal underneath.
Okay, so we have this amazing new toolkit, but we still need to figure out how to use it properly in a messy, noisy world. What about the practical side of things? How do we actually solve this O1 minimization problem? It sounds pretty intense computationally.
It can be, yeah. But thankfully, we have some really clever tools to help us out. One common approach is to use something called linear programming techniques.
Linear programming, I vaguely remember that from math class. It's all about optimizing things within certain constraints, right?
That's it. In this case, the constraints would be that the reconstructed signals frequencies, they have to match the ones we observed. And then the goal is to find the sparsest signal, the one with the smallest O1 norm that satisfies those constraints.
So it's like searching through a giant space of all these possible signals and then zeroing in on the simplest one that fits the data.
Exactly. Another approach is to use iterative methods, things like gradient descent. You might have heard of that in the context of machine learning.
Gradient descent, that's where you start with a guess
Yeah.
and then keep refining it until you find the best solution, right?
Precisely. And we can adapt these algorithms to deal with the unique challenges that the O1 norm presents because, as we discussed, it's not always smooth and well behaved.
It's amazing how much computational power we have now, that we can actually solve these really complex optimization problems in a reasonable amount of time.
It's remarkable, and it's thanks to these advances that we can take these elegant theoretical ideas and turn them into real-world tools that can have an impact.
I keep thinking back to that medical imaging example. They were able to reconstruct that 2D phantom perfectly from just a limited set of samples. It's just incredible to me.
It is. It really shows the potential here. Think about all the areas where we have incomplete data, and filling in those gaps could be transformative.
Like filling in gaps in astronomical images to see distant galaxies better, or recovering lost data in communications to make sure transmission is reliable.
Exactly. And even beyond those applications, there could be countless others where this whole reconstruction from limited data approach could completely change how we approach problems.
This is making me think about how our brains work, you know? We're constantly bombarded with all this sensory information, but we only process a tiny fraction of it.
That's a really interesting point. Could it be that our brains are using some sort of sparsity-based reconstruction to make sense of the world? Filtering out the noise and focusing on what's important?
Wow, that's a whole other deep dive for another day. But it's questions like that that this research inspires. It really pushes the boundaries of what we thought was possible with signal reconstruction.
It does, and it's a beautiful example of how these seemingly abstract mathematical concepts can end up having these profound practical implications.
I love those aha moments where theory and reality kind of come together.
Me too, and this paper's full of them.
So before we wrap up, what are the key takeaways that you want listeners to, walk away with from this deep dive?
Well, I think first and foremost, seemingly impossible is often possible. By exploiting this idea of sparsity, we can reconstruct signals and images from surprisingly limited data. It's like finding hidden order in chaos.
Right. Sparsity, it's the secret weapon. And second, uncertainty isn't always a roadblock. This new robust uncertainty principle, it shows us that we can be clever and navigate the limitations of traditional uncertainty.
Exactly. And third, the world is full of exciting problems just waiting to be solved. This research opens up a whole new way of tackling challenges in so many different fields, from medical imaging to astronomy and beyond.
I'm definitely feeling a renewed sense of wonder and possibility after this deep dive, like a whole new universe of potential has opened up.
It really has. And the best part is, this is only the beginning, you know? There's so much more to explore and discover in this field.
I'm already excited to see what the future holds for signal reconstruction, what might be possible in, say, 10, 20 years. Imagine reconstructing detailed images from just a few sensors, or recovering lost audio recordings with incredible fidelity.
We're even decoding brain signals with amazing accuracy, allowing us to understand the human mind like never before. The possibilities are endless.
It's really inspiring to think about all the ways this research could change our lives for the better. Medical breakthroughs, technological advancements, the impact could be huge. So as we wrap up here, what's one big question that you want our listeners to ponder as they go about their day?
Here's a thought-provoking one. What other areas could benefit from this whole reconstruction from limited data approach? Where else might we be overlooking the power of sparsity? Really think outside the box.
A challenge to all our listeners out there. Put on your thinking caps and let your imaginations run wild. It really feels like we've only just scratched the surface here with this whole reconstruction from limited data idea.
We have, definitely. This paper is just one piece of a much bigger puzzle, and it's a puzzle that people are actively working on right now.
So where do we go from here? What are the big open questions? the next frontiers in this field?
Well, I think one of the most exciting directions is developing even more robust algorithms, ones that can really handle real-world noise and all those imperfections. We talked about the limitations, but imagine if we could overcome them. Imagine reconstructing things with almost perfect accuracy, even with all that noise.
That'd be huge, especially in fields like medical imaging, right? Where less noise could mean more accurate diagnoses.
Absolutely. Another exciting area is exploring applications beyond what we've talked about already. Medical imaging, data recovery, sure, but what about things like using these techniques to improve AI or design more efficient communication systems?
Yeah, it makes you think about all the data we generate every day. Could we use these sparsity-based methods to, like, compress data better or to find meaningful insights from these massive data sets?
Those are great questions, and they really highlight the potential here. These ideas could revolutionize how we process information as a whole.
This makes me think back to something you said earlier about how our brains might be using sparsity to make sense of the world. It's kind of a mind-blowing thought.
It is, and it raises this question, can we learn from the brain? Can we take its strategies and develop even more powerful algorithms? It's this fascinating area where biology and computer science meet.
It's like we've come full circle. We started with this puzzle, how to reconstruct things from limited information, and now we're realizing the answer might be in understanding how our own brains do it.
Exactly. And that's what's so amazing about scientific exploration. It often leads us back to ourselves, with a deeper understanding of who we are and how we fit in.
This deep dive has been a wild ride. It feels like we've only just started to explore this huge landscape of possibilities.
I agree. This field is bursting with potential. I have no doubt that we're going to see some really groundbreaking discoveries in the years to come.
So for everyone listening, what's the one message you want them to take away from all of this?
I would say never underestimate the power of asking questions and challenging what you think you know. The biggest discoveries often come from looking at things with fresh eyes and asking, what if?
And never be afraid to dive deep into the unknown, right?
Right.
That's where the real magic happens.
That's right. So keep exploring, keep learning, and keep asking questions. The world is full of wonders.
That's a perfect note to end on. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of signal reconstruction. It's been awesome exploring these ideas with you.
It's been a pleasure. Until next time.